The rain had a voice in this city. It whispered across glass rooftops and stained the stones of the narrow alleys with memory. The street lamps flickered like sighs, golden, soft, and too tired to stay lit. Amara Vale pressed her fingers to the window of the tram, tracing the blurred outline of a gargoyle that watched her from the edge of an old chapel's roof. Even now, she could smell the wet paper and turpentine on her skin, her hands stained with the day's labor, the charcoal ghosts of forgotten sketches. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You're invited. Beneath it, an address. No explanation. No signature. She stared. The message shimmered like a dare. The address led her to the edge of the old quarter, where the sea clawed at the stone walls, and the buildings stood like tired lovers clinging to each other. The gallery was there, black-bricked, ivy-veiled, its windows tall and candlelit from within. A brass plaque read, "The Eighth Veil." Amara hesitated. Then the door opened. He stood there in shadow, tall, lean, dressed in black that shimmered like oil. Lucien Moreau. The name alone had stirred the art world into hushes and wild theories. Patron, collector, predator, some said. A man with the eyes of a wolf and the voice of a confession whispered in a cathedral. "Miss Vale," he said, stepping aside. "You've come." "Did I have a choice?" she asked, voice low. He smiled. "Not really." The gallery was a cathedral of decadence. Crimson velvet curtains, mirrors rimmed with gold, art that bled color and madness, and in the center, a single canvas, blank. "For you," Lucien said. "I don't remember accepting anything." He stepped closer. "Not yet, but you will." His presence was gravity. He moved like music, slow, certain, composed of shadows. Amara felt her pulse rise, the hairs on her neck lifting in silent surrender. He poured her a glass of wine, deep red, like bruises blooming on pale skin. "I offer you a patronage," he said. "1 month. You stay here, paint, create. I'll give you everything you need. In return," she arched a brow, "my soul?" Lucien chuckled, low and velvet rich. "Nothing so crude. Just honesty. Brutal, aching, bleeding honesty on canvas." The first night in her studio was sleepless. Rain tapped the skylight above her like fingers against glass. She painted in bursts, visions, dreams, strange faces with Lucien's mouth and stranger eyes. He watched her, not always seen, but always felt. Sometimes she'd find a new brush waiting, a dress left in her room, a piece of music playing she didn't remember turning on. Their first touch came days later. She stood barefoot, paint smeared, the hem of her slip damp with wine she'd spilled laughing alone. Lucien entered, quiet as breath. "Let me see," he said, stepping behind her. She turned the canvas. It was raw, a woman's face, terrified, aroused, screaming in silence. Lucien didn't speak. Instead, he reached forward, brushing a smear of paint from her cheek with his thumb. But he didn't pull away. His hand lingered, trailed to her jaw. Her pulse throbbed beneath his touch. "Art," he murmured, "is what we cannot say aloud." And then his lips, not soft, not hesitant, they claimed her like a signature scrawled across her skin. Her back hit the studio wall. The brush dropped. Her breath caught fire. But he didn't take her. Not yet. Instead, he whispered, "When you beg for it, I'll give you everything." Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of rain and smoke behind. The mornings at the 8th Vale were never bright. The sun seemed to avoid it, as if Lucien's world refused to be illuminated by anything so mundane. Amara awoke to shadows painted across silk sheets, and the faint echo of piano keys drifting through the corridor. She wore the dress he left her. It was the color of blood roses, its fabric whispering against her thighs as she moved. No artist could resist a muse like this. But Lucien, he made her feel like she was the muse, and he the predator, watching through the gold frame. He awaited her in the conservatory, seated among orchids and candlelight. No morning greetings, no small talk. Just the way his eyes traced her figure, slow and unapologetic. "You're late," he said, voice smooth as wine poured in the dark. "You're impatient," she replied, lifting the cup of black coffee waiting beside her chair. It was exactly how she liked it. Always. He leaned forward. "I'm many things, Amara, but patient isn't one of them. Not when desire's involved." Her breath caught at that word, not in fear, but in anticipation. That night, she painted him, not by name or face, but by sensation. Bold strokes, crimson shadows, tension wrapped in oil and canvas, a man undone by control, a body made of restraint and violence barely held in check. When she showed him, his silence was a storm. "So you see me," he said, voice hoarse. "Too clearly." He stood close enough for her to smell the bergamot and ash on his collar. He didn't kiss her this time. He pressed his mouth to her throat, right where her heartbeat fluttered fastest. Her hands trembled. "You want to know what I taste like, don't you?" he murmured. Her only answer was the way she tilted her neck for him. His mouth brushed her skin, but it was his hands, one firm on her waist, the other cupping her nape, that made her knees weaken. He kissed her like he was reading a script he'd memorized years ago. Slow, searing, deliberate. When he finally pulled away, her breath was ragged, her body singing. "That," he said, "was a taste. When you paint me truthfully, I'll feed you more." And she knew he wasn't speaking of food. Lucien did not return the next night, or the one after, but his absence filled every corner of the 8th Vale like smoke. It clung to her skin, crawled into her dreams. Amara painted obsessively, pages torn, the canvases slashed. Her fingers ached, raw and blistered. She was chasing something. His breath on her neck, the promise he made. When you beg for it, she would never beg. But she wanted. Gods, how she wanted. She found him 3 days later in the undergallery, a hidden space below the chapel floor. The room was lined with art forbidden by censors. Lovers entwined, mouths open in desperate need, but none of it compared to Lucien, seated in the center, shirt unbuttoned, hair damp. "Have you come to beg?" he asked without turning. "No," she said. "I've come to steal." His eyes burned as he stood, slow and sleek. "You think I won't give it freely?" "I think you want me to take it." Their kiss this time was war. Teeth, tongue, a collision of need and fury and restraint undone. Her hands tore at his shirt. His mouth left fire against her collarbone. He pushed her against a marble pedestal. "This is the moment," he growled. "Say it." But she only moaned, nails dragging across his back. He didn't take her. Not fully. He threatened to, teased the line. His hands were heat, his mouth chaos. "Not yet," he whispered. "Not until the painting is finished, until you bleed me onto the canvas." And she whispered back, "Then I'll make you immortal." Lucien did not return the next night, or the one after, but his absence filled every corner of the 8th veil like smoke. It clung to her skin, crawled into her dreams. Amara painted obsessively, pages torn, canvases slashed. Her fingers ached, raw and blistered. She was chasing something. His breath on her neck, the promise he made. When you beg for it, she would never beg. But she wanted. Gods, how she wanted. She found him 3 days later in the undergallery, a hidden space below the chapel floor. The room was lined with art forbidden by censors. Lovers entwined, mouths open in desperate need. But none of it compared to Lucien, seated in the center, shirt unbuttoned, hair damp. "Have you come to beg?" he asked, without turning. "No," she said. "I've come to steal." His eyes burned as he stood, slow and sleek. "You think I won't give it freely?" "I think you want me to take it." Their kiss this time was war. Teeth, tongue, a collision of need and fury and restraint undone. Her hands tore at his shirt. His mouth left fire against her collarbone. He pushed her against a marble pedestal. "This is the moment," he growled. "Say it." But she only moaned, nails dragging across his back. He didn't take her. Not fully. He threatened to, teased the line. His hands were heat, his mouth chaos. "Not yet," he whispered. "Not until the painting is finished, until you bleed me onto the canvas." And she whispered back, "Then I'll make you immortal." That night, she did not sleep. She painted until her arms went numb, until the candles melted to nubs, until the first blue light of dawn kissed the windows. The painting was a storm made flesh, Lucien's storm. And in the center, a woman, wide-eyed, lips parted, consumed. She didn't remember finishing it. She only remembered waking with paint on her chest, Lucien standing at the foot of her bed, Watching, he said nothing, only reached for her hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed her palm. "When you're ready," he said, "I will destroy you beautifully." And she believed him. The garden behind the 8th Veil was not on any map. Walled in by obsidian stone and crowned with ivy, it bloomed under moonlight alone. Orchids that opened only after dusk, roses black as ink, and vines that whispered when the wind brushed their leaves. Amara discovered it one night when sleep would not come. Drawn by the music of wind chimes and the faint scent of sandalwood, she followed a narrow stairwell beyond the library shelves, and there, beneath a lattice of stars, was Lucien. He is shirtless, the candlelight oozing across his skin like pockets of gold. In his hand, a silver dagger. On his forearm, a thin red line. She froze. "I'm not bleeding for pain," he said, without looking. "I'm bleeding for balance, for focus." Amara approached, eyes fixed on the crimson that trailed his skin. "And does it help?" "No," he said, "but it reminds me I'm still human, despite you." He offered her the dagger. She took it. "Not your skin," he said. "Not yet. Cut away your fear." And she understood. She took a single rose, black and blooming, and sliced its stem. Blood-red sap stained her fingers. Lucien leaned close, kissed the mark she left behind. "I'm going to paint you tonight," she said. "I thought you already had." "Not like this." In the studio, she made him sit. For hours. He watched her with eyes like wolves at dusk, unblinking, as she traced him with her brush. Not just his form, but the space between them, the air that trembled, the things he didn't say. The painting that emerged was not of a man, but of a storm restrained by flesh, eyes full of fire and longing, a mouth sculpted for sins, and a gaze fixed on something that made even shadows blush. Lucien stood when she was done. "Now," he said, "I will give you what you've earned." He did not ask. He took. He lifted her like a statue he meant to worship and ruin all at once, set her upon the studio's chaise, tore the ribbon from her dress with his teeth. Every kiss was an invocation, every sigh a vow. When he entered her, it was slow, deep, final. The brush fell from her hand. They moved like ink in water, dissolving into one another, staining everything. And when it ended, when the breath returned and her body stopped shaking, Lucien whispered, "You're mine now." She didn't leave the studio for days. She couldn't. Every time she tried to paint, her hands would tremble. Her thoughts returned to him, to the way he spoke her name like a prayer meant for ruin. Lucien stayed away. She burned for him. On the 5th night, a new letter appeared on her pillow. "The veil is lifting. Meet me where we first bled." Amara knew the way. Her bare feet kissed the same cold stone steps, down into the garden veiled in black and moonlight. He was waiting beside the thorned roses, wearing the same silence that always spoke louder than words. "I'm unraveling," she told him. "You were meant to." He cupped her face, studying the damage like a masterpiece still forming. "But you're not finished. Not yet." He guided her deeper into the garden, where a mirror waited, tall, ancient, framed in gold. "This is what I see," he said. She looked, but what met her gaze was not her reflection. It was a woman half mad with wanting, eyes hollowed by longing, lips red with secrets. And Lucien behind her, his hands on her hips, his mouth at her ear. "This is who you've become. The question is, can you survive it?" He didn't wait for an answer. He undressed her there, beneath the stars, with reverence and slow violence. She melted beneath him. She shattered, and he rebuilt her with every kiss, every moan, every whispered command. They made love on the stone altar beneath the wild roses. There were no vows, just scars pressed against skin, promises etched in touch, and breath that trembled between them like prophecy. Later, when she lay in his arms, he said, "You've crossed the veil, Amara. There is no going back." And she replied, "Then burn the map." By dawn, the final painting waited in the gallery, draped in velvet, pulsing with the energy of a heart too long contained. Lucien stood beside her. "Shall we reveal it?" She nodded. When the cloth fell, the room went silent. The painting showed her, nude, crowned in thorns, mouth parted in ecstasy or agony. And behind her, Lucien, shadowed, powerful, undone. It was not just a portrait. It was a confession, and the world would see it. The unveiling shattered more than silence. News spread in whispers first, than roars. Art critics called it a triumph of vulnerability. Others called it sacrilege, obscene. Lucien called it truth. The gallery brimmed with visitors, but Amara stood still at the back, veiled in shadow, watching them drink her like wine. None of them knew what it cost, what it tasted like, what it meant to strip oneself bare and survive. Lucien watched too, but from a different height, like a king overseeing a kingdom built on secrets. He didn't approach her until the last guest had gone. "You've broken them," he murmured, trailing his fingers down her spine. "I thought I'd feel free," she confessed. "You are. You just don't recognize the feeling yet." He kissed her temple. "You've passed through all the veils. There's nothing left to hide." But that wasn't true. It began with the dreams. Dark corridors, cold breath on her neck, the sound of Lucien's voice, but wrong, hollow, cruel. He was always just beyond the next door. One night, she woke to find her room painted, floor to ceiling. Images she didn't remember painting. Eyes, mouths, hands reaching for things they shouldn't. Lucien entered. "You're not done," he said simply. "I don't remember doing this." He touched the wall. "Your truth is spilling out faster than your mind can contain it." She turned away. "I don't want to be seen anymore." But it's too late for that. She began to unravel, not in madness, but in a deeper undoing. She saw people now the way Lucien did, by what they hid. The shopkeeper's smile tinged with sorrow, the pianist's aching wrists, a child's drawing of something that should not exist, and she painted obsessively, obscenely, wholly. Lucien watched, never interfering, but sometimes she felt him trembling. "Does it scare you?" she asked once. "No," he replied. "It reminds me I was human once." She didn't ask what he was now. On the eve of her final exhibition, she found him in the chapel, kneeling at the altar of shattered glass and spilled wax. "I can't hold you much longer," he said, voice strained. "What do you mean?" "You've become too much, too radiant, too dangerous." "You said I was yours." "I lied." He looked up, eyes full of grief and awe. "You never belonged to anyone, not even me." The final painting was unveiled in a silence that was almost reverent. It showed Lucien, on his knees, haloed in smoke and guilt, weeping before a woman wrapped in starlight. Her face was turned away, her mouth open, screaming, singing. No one could tell, but they all felt it. She left the gallery that night with nothing. No brushes, no fame, no chains. Just the sound of the sea and the smell of roses in her hair. Lucien didn't follow. He couldn't. She had crossed the final veil, and what lay beyond was hers alone to claim.